Our scripture today comes from Mark chapter 5, verses 13 through 16. It says, "You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to the Father who is in heaven." This is the word of God today for the people of God.
Praise be to God.
Amen. Again, I ask you to pay attention to the insert in your bulletin, and we're going to keep mentioning that. Also, for those of you that are coming to Bible study, we're going to implement that into our Bible study in the next few weeks. So really, for those of you attending, you just need to show up this week, and I'll tell you what you need to know. How's that? We'll be back up at Main Street, upstairs as well. But I've been thinking a lot about discipleship, and thinking a lot about, what does that mean? And even I thought about the vows that we take to become members of the church. And that's what I'd like right now. You all tell me what you all promise. For those of you that are members of Walnut Street United Methodist Church, what did you promise? Your presence. That's one of them. Huh? Work? Kinda. Support. I'm going to have to give them to you, or I'm going to forget. Okay? Our prayers, our presence, our gifts. Maybe it's our work, June, our service. And then we added this a few years back, our witness. But say we make those promises. Promises to pray. Promises for our presence, our gifts, service, and our witness. Does that necessarily make us disciples? Because when you think about it, we could say, well, what's prayer? How often do I need to pray? And if we talk about presence, what's that? Is that every week? Is it every couple weeks? Once a month? Does it count that if I can't be there today, I can just say, well, Pastor, I won't be there today, but I'll be there in spirit? Does that count? Because I'm not saying that you can't be here in spirit, but I found over the years that if everybody said that, I'm not sure how great the church would be. Our gifts, what does that entail? Does that entail a tithe? Does it entail, I give what I want to, when I want to? If I don't have any other bills, I'll give. If I'm running tight on cash, what does that mean? What about the work? What about the service? What does that entail? And as far as witness goes, what does that mean? Because, I'm not perfect, and I can't be perfect all the time. So we still have a lot of questions. And even last weekend, the conference did a conference-wide thing, and it was based on the book that's entitled Membership to Discipleship. And even within that book, it describes discipleship as, or a disciple as being someone who is a follower of Jesus Christ for life. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean to be a follower of Jesus Christ? Let alone for life, we can throw that out, but what does it simply mean to be a follower for Jesus? There again, we'll probably leave that with a lot more questions than what we have answers. But yet, as I was looking at our text this week, our text opens up by saying that we are the salt of the earth. But it goes on to say, but if salt loses its taste, what good is it? Well, the question would be, can salt lose its taste? Probably in today's world it can't, can it? But in biblical times, when a lot of their salt, especially in this area, whenever it came from the Dead Sea, it was not only salt, but it was also mixed with a lot of different minerals. And some commentators would say that after it set out for a while, it could become useless. I'm going to rely on them for that part of it. But we're salt. Well, what does salt do? Huh? Flavor. Helps things, right? What else does it do? It preserves, doesn't it? So salt is something that makes things better. It is something that preserves. So how do we apply that then to discipleship? Called to be disciples means what? Called to make things better, right? Called to preserve. Now, I like salt, don't get me wrong, but I'm not one that, some of you, things are salted and then you add the whole container on top of it, right? A little bit more. Now, I like a lot of things. You can look at me and tell that, but how many of you like brown beans? Oh, y'all are okay then. Some of you are shaking your head no, but you just don't know what you're missing. But do you like them without any salt? I'm with Linda on this. If you don't salt them, I probably won't eat them, okay? Now, I guess you can actually go overboard on as far as that goes, but, it's just something that with the right amount, those are some good things. How many of you like country ham? What's the key ingredient? Salt to preserve, right? The only thing I find that you all don't do that my mom grew up, Mom always, when she makes our country ham, she always makes a red-eye gravy. And basically all you do is after you fry your meat, you put water on it and you keep boiling it down. And it's more of what I would call a water gravy, but the more you cook it, the redder it gets and the saltier it gets, because it takes all those preservatives, in a sense, back out of the ham. It could kill me one of these days, but I could almost just drink that, okay? You put it on a biscuit or on toast. Just doesn't get any better than that, John. That's all I'm saying. But let's apply this to being a disciple. If salt, or if the illustration of salt means that we are to make things better, if it means we are to preserve things, how do we deal with that? Because when you start talking about discipleship, I believe we are talking about something that makes a difference. And you can take the vows that you made to a church. You can go a lot of different avenues, but you still have to ask yourself, am I making a difference? Are my prayers making a difference? Is my presence in the service making a difference? When I give to the church, is my giving or does my giving make a difference? I'm sure you all didn't see this, but there was one Sunday Kathy was here and she was digging through her purse to get out her offering, and the TV remote fell out of her pocketbook. And John asked her, said, Kathy, do you have a habit of bringing the TV remote to church? And Kathy just said, well, George wouldn't come with me today, so I thought one of the most evil things I could do legally is bring the remote. How'd that work? That might be an idea, I'm just saying. What difference? There again, it's about our tithe. What difference does it make? Our service, our witness, are we making things better? It goes along a little, well, not a little bit, but a whole lot with Linda's prayer request. As the church and as disciples, how are we making things better? As you go through life, as you live every day, and maybe even ask yourself, well, what does it mean to be a disciple? Ask yourself this, how am I making things better? Because if you are not making things better in life, I would re-examine whether you're truly a disciple. Because Jesus was saying to those early disciples, I need you to be the salt of the earth. Because if we're not salt, if we're not making a difference, let's be honest, what good are we? It's no different than the salt that's lost its taste. It said there, if salt has lost its taste, it's good for nothing, and it's just well be trampled on the ground. Well, if the church and people, or as God's people, if we're not making a difference, what's the point? Because not only is it about making a difference, it's about persevering, it's about preserving. And I kind of look at preserving this way, why do we do what we do? Why did we have church today? Why did we come together and worship? Well, part of it is we need to fellowship. We need to hear the word. We need to have the word taught to us. But I also believe this, in persevering, we're also saying to ourselves, well, there's somebody today. Maybe it's at Walnut Street Church. Maybe it's at Maine. Maybe it's at Mount Zion. Could be around the world today. But I truly believe that there's somebody somewhere today that needs Jesus. Even as these words go out over Facebook, there's somebody somewhere that needs to hear. Maybe they haven't entered into relationship yet with Christ, but who knows? Maybe it's somebody that's been active in the church for 30 years. And they've just maybe never asked themselves, well, what does it mean to be a disciple? How do I make a difference? How do I preserve? And I think Jesus lays it out right here. Well, the way we make a difference is by letting our light shine. Because keep in mind, in the Old Testament, all this light was basically a bowl that had oil in it with a wick floating in it. And the reason that they had those was to what? To produce light. So that it could be seen and so that they could see. And for those particular lights, now, you know, we in this day and time, we have lights for everything, right? I tell Jamie and the girls sometimes, they got our house lit up at night just like it's daytime. It drives me nuts because I think it's dark. Let's go to sleep. I still haven't won the battle, so I mean, it is what it is. But you know, if we were to do the illustration, you know, if we had a candle this morning, and I would take that candle and then place a glass over it, how long does it burn? It doesn't. Maybe a few seconds. But as soon as that light stops getting oxygen, it's going to go out. And Jesus is saying to the disciples, I need you to let your light shine. In Philippians chapter 2 and verse 15, it says, do all things without grumbling or disputing, that you may be blameless and innocent children of God, without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world. So there again, I believe Jesus is saying to us, I need you to let your light shine. That's why I need you to be my disciples. In the New International Critical Commentary, it talks about the job description of a disciple. But it says, the job description of a disciple is not fulfilled by private, personal holiness. So we really don't fulfill discipleship in our own personal way. Now, we can make the case, and we may in the next few weeks, there are certain things that we need to be disciplined in. Wesley referred to those as the means of grace. And if you were to Google means of grace, you're going to get a lot of different answers. You're going to probably find prayer, fasting, worshiping together, taking part in communion, and the list can vary from then on out. But again, going back to the commentary, it says that it's not fulfilled by private personal holiness, but includes the witness of public exposure. Well, why let our light shine? Goes along with a statement that I make quite often, you know, we let our light shine so that what? So that others can see Christ living inside of us. Now, it's not about us, even in I believe it's 1 Peter chapter 2. All starting at verse 12. It says, keep your conduct among the Gentiles honorable, so that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day of visitation. How many of you have ever had somebody say something about you? Most of us. Now I realize I got to be careful because I know it can hurt. Words can hurt, and that's a whole sermon in itself. So when somebody says something about that or about us, well, what if what they say is true? What do? Sometimes the truth hurts, doesn't it? And I found in life that sometimes when somebody speaks the truth, you just kind of got to take it, and sometimes you got to own up to it. But what happens when it hurts? Does that bother us? Should it? Because I wonder sometimes, because as I read these verses, as God says to us, let our light shine. Because I find in life, and this is unfortunate, and I didn't realize until this week, and Jamie pointed it out to me this morning, but it was a comment made off The View. And it says, and I don't even know now the lady that made the comment, but it's on the news. Just go home and watch the news. But it says as long as people are just speaking to God, that's okay. But whenever we start hearing voices and that God's speaking to us, we suffer from a mental illness. Well, I could have saved her a lot of time. I've known I've probably suffered from a mental illness a long time ago. But that's just me. That's got Christians in an uproar, or some Christians in an uproar, just because of something that's said. And maybe, just maybe, well, this is not maybe, there are times when you got to speak up. I believe that. But there's also times I believe that if whatever somebody says is not true, I wouldn't worry about it. If what they're saying about you is not true, don't worry. Don't let it bug you. Why? Because if it's not true, as it pans out, it could last a week, it could last a month, it could last years. But if it's not true, it'll all work out. And God's saying to us, let your light shine. Whatever you do, wherever you are, let your light shine. Make a difference in the world in which you live. Make it better, preserve, whatever it is. Just let your light shine, because in the end, that's all that matters. And I believe sometimes if we would just learn to live that out, just not worrying what somebody else thinks. Somebody's always going to think something. You ought to know that by now. Unfortunately, people are going to say things that hurt. That's just who they are. Just let it be. And especially if the things that they say and do are not true, people will soon figure that out. I'll use Dale as an illustration. If Dale builds bad fence, it'll be bad fence, right? And sooner or later, don't be surprised if Dale don't have any work anywhere. Why? Because it's all panned out. And I guarantee you could go out here and people would say, well, Dale Murphy builds good fence, and you'll get others that says he ain't worth a nickel. Right? That's people. But as long as you're around, sooner or later you'll figure it out. I don't know if he builds good fence or not, but mine at the parsonage looks nice, so that's all that matters to me. If yours don't look good, you just ain't doing something right. That's all I'm saying. But discipleship. Over the next few weeks, I want you to think about what does it mean? How do we make the world a better place? How do we add flavor to the world? How do we preserve? How do we let our light shine? Because it's in the midst of that, we start to figure out what discipleship is. And you also have to keep in this in mind as well. It depends on, discipleship changes. If you've just entered into relationship with God today, what discipleship means to you is totally different than maybe for myself that's been on the road for 20 years. Sometimes we overwhelm newcomers way too fast. We burn them out way too fast because we expect too much. And when it comes to discipleship, you have to be able to recognize those phases. You have to be able to recognize where people are at. That's important. But these are things that we're going to look at over the next couple of weeks and see how we can become better disciples. Because as disciples, I think we need to make a difference. So as we stand and sing this morning, Holy, Holy, Holy. I done thought the choir, I done thought you all stole my song this morning.
We did that before you even saw your song, so the Lord works mysterious.
But after, I thought, well, that doesn't sound like the one I picked, so that's okay. But won't you respond today to God? And most of all, won't you respond to what it means to be a disciple as we sing this morning?